The story takes place at the Lammer Citadel, a holy shrine where several snotty-nosed brats are present to receive their gifts. Rina, seeing an altar for the first time, wonders about the gift they might receive and asks Kai if he's excited. Kai agrees, saying that he's a little excited and adds that the gift thing has been on his mind since yesterday. Seeing him panic like a total dweeb, Rina decides to walk away, leaving Kai, who still can't believe that the day has come when he'll be given his own gift. Apparently, in this world, when a human turns 13, they receive a special blessing from gods known as a gift. There are a variety of gifts ranging from handling weapons to the ability to use magic. Following that, Renee mentions that she'd like to become a princess, but becoming a rabbit wouldn't be so bad. Kai lets her know that she isn't becoming a princess with the face card she's rocking, and when Rina asks Kai about the gift he wants, Kai replies that a sword gift would be nice. However, only he knows that it's a complete lie, as he doesn't want a sword gift at all. His grandpa is the only one who wants Kai to have this gift and take over the family's sword dojo. What Kai truly wants is a gift that lets him go on adventures and become a great hunter like his mom. Hunters are people who explore unknown parts of the world and defeat evil monsters. Kai then begins to think how he doesn't have any talent with a sword to begin with, and that his only 2 brain cells don't allow him to learn as fast as most people could. While he figures that his relative named Roman should be the one to inherit the dojo, a loud noise catches their attention. Turns out someone received a rare gift, and that person turns out to be Lila, who comes running towards the 2 of them. When Kai asks about the gift she received, Lila replies that she got the gift called Sword Expert. Lila is the only daughter of a longsword dojo, as well as the girl Kai will be clapping in the future. However, her being his fiancée is something their parents decided for them. Simultaneously, Keith and Roman appear as well, and before Kai can even ask Roman about his gift, Roman shoves him aside and tries to rizz up Lila, telling her that he got the gift called Spear King. But she doesn't seem that surprised, as Lila had already seen him. Just then, a member of the Holy King's Order of Paladins arrives, asking to speak to Lila regarding the gift she received. When Lila mentions that her gift isn't that unique, the oldie replies that she has trained every day from dusk till dawn to hone her sword skills, which is why they want her to join their ranks. Kai thinks Lila is truly amazing and asks her to go talk to them. With that being said, Lila leaves and Keith apologizes to Kai for Roman, who got all worked up. After they are all gone, Rina tells Kai that the line is moving, and before long, her turn arrives. The priest gets surprised seeing her gift and lets her know that she got the Sword Master gift. Hearing about her gift makes the guard discuss how everyone is getting overpowered gifts, and they start to wonder if this is because the demons are planning an attack. After scolding the guards for yapping too much, he asks Kai to come forward. He first asks for Kai's name and tells him to place his hand on the crystal. As soon as he places his hand over the crystal, his body suddenly starts feeling heavy, and the light from the crystal ends up disappearing as well. The priest also loses a few years of his life seeing his gifts and tells Kai that it's the most incompetent gift in the world. Some time has passed since that day, and currently, Roman and Kai are having a practice duel. Everyone seems to be cheering for Roman, reminding him that his opponent is the most incompetent in the world. As Kai struggles to keep up with Roman, he eventually gets hit on the forehead and falls onto the ground like a pathetic weakling. Just when he is about to faint, the view of 2 ginormous jugs right in front of his face wakes him up. Lila helps him get back up on his feet, while Kai can't help but have a staring competition with them. Following that, she rubs medicine on his forehead wound, and Kai remembers that since he received that gift, his life has been going downhill. Due to his gift, Kai's physical abilities have gotten weaker than women and children who haven't done an ounce of training. No one talks to him anymore, and even strangers have started bullying him for no reason. Currently, only Lila and a few others treat him the same way, even though his engagement with Lila was cancelled the day he got the gift. He is now a nobody but figures that it's fine as he has gotten used to it. Following that, Lila asks if he's going to the royal capital soon, to which Kai agrees, saying that it's pretty hard for him to stay at Lammer. If he goes to the capital, Kai is hopeful that he might be treated like a human again. Lila questions if he plans to find a job, but Kai disagrees, saying that he plans to go to the neighboring city. It's home to a race without gifts, and he's sure that even someone like him can find some kind of work there. Additionally, he promises to send Lila letters, but she replies that it won't be necessary and runs away, telling him that she needs to sort out her luggage. Kai also decides to go and talk to his grandpa, but runs into Roman on the way. Roman reminds him that he's the holder of the Spear King gift, and since Kai isn't engaged to her anymore, he's the only right man for her. However, Kai replies that it's something Lila should decide for herself, which makes Roman question if Kai thinks Lila would choose an incompetent mutt like him. Kai answers back and tells Roman that his feelings towards her are different and that he has nothing to worry about. Before Roman can ask any more questions, his teacher calls him to continue the practice battles, forcing him to abandon their conversation. Meanwhile, Kai thinks Lila is more like a sister to him and regrets that he couldn't tell Roman about it. Later that day, he appears in front of his grandpa, who apologizes to Kai for putting him through all this trouble. When Kai asks what he means, his grandpa mentions his engagement being cancelled and him being chased out of the house. But to his surprise, Kai replies that he doesn't mind at all, as he's always seen Lila as his sister, and besides, going to the royal capital was a dream of his. This causes his grandpa to burst out laughing, telling Kai that his eyes used to be clouded before, but now he doesn't have to worry as they seem to be more clear than ever. Lastly, his grandpa says that no matter what gift he possesses, he still is a part of the family and always welcomes back. But when Kai replies that he doubts he'll ever come back, his grandpa yells at him, telling Kai to let him see his face every now and then. With that being said, his grandpa prepares to leave and asks Kai to take good care of himself, to which he agrees. Now that everything is settled, Kai packs his bag and thinks that he'll finally be heading to Babel, the gathering point of all aspiring hunters, where he'll take his chance to become a hunter as well. Following that, Kai tries finding the carriage station and figures that it must be around the corner. Just then, a luxury carriage stops right in front of him, which makes Kai wonder what kind of person could be riding inside. To his surprise, a busty baddie steps out of it, asking if he's Kai and introducing herself Rosemary. Kai instantly remembers that it's the same name as the Amelia Kingdom's priestess, and before he could say anything, Rosemary mentions that she will be accompanying him to the royal capital. Additionally, she asks him to call her Rose, to which Kai hesitantly agrees. Suddenly, her maid begins staring into Kai's soul and ends up grabbing him by his collar, confusing Kai. She then calls him an incompetent brat, asking if he has no manners, but gets scolded by Rosemary, who tells her to stop that at once, reminding her maid that she's the one who wanted to travel with Kai, and that her action brings shame to both her and Kai's grandfather. This causes the maid to apologize, while the carriage driver tells Rosemary that Rosanna's actions were out of devotion to her. Following that, Rosemary slaps herself as hard as she can, shocking Kai, and while bleeding through her mouth, asks him if they should get going. Nonetheless, he prepares to get on the carriage, wondering if all nobles have a loose screw like her. Additionally, he is grateful to his grandpa for arranging the ride, but can't help wondering if he'll be okay around these people. Later that day, they make a stop at a camp and Kai stands in line, waiting for his turn to receive food. The chief lets him know that it's his turn, but only gives him a loaf of bread, saying that it's Sir Frankton's order. Kai remembers his grandpa telling him that all travel expenses were paid for, and thinks that he might need to pay separately for food. Just then, a man who's built like a stress ball purposely bumps into Kai, causing him to fall down and waste the only loaf of bread he had. Before Kai can say anything, that man begins yelling at Kai, blaming him for bumping into him. Furthermore, he kicks Kai on the stomach and continues kicking the life out of him. Out of nowhere, Rosanna appears and tells him to stop. This makes that man even more furious, and he questions if Rosanna is protecting the traitor, to which she replies that she's merely following Rosemary's orders. Suddenly, the sound of someone hitting their sword on the ground catches their attention, followed by that man asking the reason behind the commotion. Having no other choice, the fatty is forced to walk away, and Kai takes a breath of relief. However, when he tries to thank Rosanna, she walks away, letting him know that she wouldn't have helped him if it weren't for Rosemary's orders. While walking past each other, both Rosanna and that man greet each other. Following that man comes up too, mentioning that one of her men caused trouble for him again. Kai recognizes him as Arnold. Surprisingly, he begins bowing in front of Kai, saying that his subordinate's rude behavior is due to his own negligence. But Kai mentions that it's always the same, as both people from the capital and Amelia Kingdom see him as an existence shunned by God. This makes Arnold decide to bring Kai's food to his tent from now on. But when Kai tries to tell Arnold that he doesn't have to go that far, Arnold replies that youngsters like him should be more honest. Afterward, he takes Kai to the head chef and confronts him for his rude behavior. The head chef tries to explain that Frankton told him to do so, which makes Arnold grab the head chef's collar, ordering him to make more food for Kai. The head chef, barely holding himself from soiling his pants, orders all his workers to prepare a meal for Kai. Eventually, he is given a load of food, and when he tries to thank Arnold, he is told that this is what he's entitled to, and that Kai should eat a lot so he can grow a nice big sausage. With that being said, Arnold walks away, deciding to talk to Frankton and his other subordinates as well, while Kai stands there in shock, surprised that there are people like him in the world as well. 3 days later, Kai is once again given a ton of food, and this time, people make sure not to bump into him anymore. That night, Kai lays in his tent, wondering how Keith and Rena are doing right now. This reminds him that Keith was going to the royal capital to study while Rena had joined the heroes' party to defeat the Demon King. Just then, Rosemary appears outside his tent, asking Kai's permission to come in. Ultimately, he lets her inside and sits awkwardly in front of her, wondering if this is a friend with benefits kind of situation. Additionally, he thinks how he doesn't like dealing with her, as people might harass him again if they saw him with her. But before he can ask her anything, she apologizes, leaving him shocked. Rosemary elaborates that she heard what the knights did to him the other day, but Kai lets her know that it's in the past and she doesn't have to be sorry about that. But Rosemary argues that it happened because she selfishly asked his grandpa to travel with him to the capital. This makes Kai question why she wanted to travel with him, and Rosemary replies that it's because he's Rena and Keith's childhood friend. Shocked, Kai asks if she knows Rena and Keith, to which she agrees. Apparently, Keith is the younger apprentice of the head court magician who is also her mentor, while Rena is her best friend. Hearing that she's learning magic under the head magician makes Kai wonder if she's the hold priestess Queen Laura, but figures that it's not possible. Following that, he asks Rosemary if they told her about him, and she agrees, telling Kai that Rena is always talking about him and right now, she might know him more than Keith does. After hearing so much about him from them, she wanted to meet Kai herself. Afterward, he asks Rosemary if Rena is doing well in the heroes team, and she agrees, telling him that all the heroes and knights love to be around a cheerful hottie. Soon after, their conversation is interrupted by Rosanna, who enters the tent and tells Rosemary that she should be getting to sleep soon. Rosemary realizes that she must have lost track of time while talking to Kai and decides to head back. Kai thanks Rosemary for teaching him all those things, and she replies that she had fun as well, wanting to talk sometime again. After she leaves, Kai prepares to get some sleep, but gets interrupted once again, this time by Arnold. He apologizes for barging in so late, and says that he just wanted to thank him. Kai questions the reason as he hasn't done anything, but Arnold once again bows in front of him, thanking Kai for talking to Rosemary despite everything that happened. Kai tells him to raise his head, saying that he should be thanking Rosemary for talking to a waste of oxygen like him. After that, Arnold informs Kai that he was bestowed a weak gift as well, which is why he can empathize with him. Furthermore, he motivates Kai to do his best, as if he works hard enough, he'll definitely be rewarded. On the other hand, two shady-looking dudes are hanging out in the forest when Frankton appears as well. When Frankton asks them about their progress, the skeleton dude mentions that all the Empire's finest summoners are in position and reassures him that not even a single mouse will be able to escape. Frankton compliments the skeleton dude named Ents, and he asks Frankton about the princess movements. Frankton replies that Rosemary was engaging in conversation with Kai, but is sound asleep. All that's left is to cause a commotion and separate Arnold from her side. Signal interrupts, saying that if it weren't for Rosemary, Gilbert will be given the throne, the person Frankton supports. Furthermore, he mocks Frankton for trying to sell out the royal he serves, saying that the soldiers wouldn't dare to think of that. Frankton questions if Signal means they have no shame, to which Signal replies, apologizing in a sarcastic manner for phrasing it wrong. Furious, Frankton begins yelling at Signal, saying that he doesn't know anything about the nation's internal matters. Additionally, he mentions that they are not betraying Rosemary, but wants to wed her to the Empire. Ultimately, Ents stops Signal from talking back and apologizes to Frankton for his behavior. Nonetheless, Frankton decides to head back to the camp and start the operation, letting them know that he's counting on them. While walking back, Frankton thinks about how it's time to drive the princess out of their homeland. He believes that with the two empires' strongest assets by his side, he can't fail, as Rosemary will destroy the noble orders he has been protecting. Ultimately, he pledges to get it done and swears his loyalty to Prince Gilbert. At the same time, Kai steps out of his tent, regretting not going to the bathroom one more time before sleeping. He wonders if he should do it near the tent, but realizes that he doesn't want anyone to see his smooth peaches. Eventually, he appears far enough and notices that it's really dark for him to see his own footing. Ultimately, he finds the perfect spot to unload his dump, only to notice someone already standing there. Both Kai and Signal stare at each other, causing Kai to wonder why that is, as this person wasn't in the carriage. Nonetheless, Kai decides to talk to him and questions if he's someone who lives around the area. This makes Signal go into deep thinking, and he ultimately remembers that there wasn't anything about this in the report and that he can just call it an accident. Furthermore, he figures that as long as it doesn't interfere with the plan, a little playtime should be fine. Kai instantly notices that something is wrong, and even Signal advises him to run away if he can. With that being said, he snaps his fingers, causing the appearance of several giant monsters. Without wasting any time, Kai begins running for his life and wonders what on earth is going on. He can't understand the reason that man is sending monsters after him without any reason, and why he wants to eliminate him when he hasn't even done anything. Soon after, Kai begins to notice that he can't breathe, and that his whole body is breaking down from running this much. For once, he begins begging his gift to disappear so he can run a bit faster, and notices that he can already hear footsteps right behind him. This causes him to question why he's always getting targeted and begins blaming his gift. While running, he fell down but made sure to stand up and continue running, remembering all the times he had suffered because of his cursed gift. Furthermore, he starts to wish that he got a swordsmanship gift instead, as he wouldn't have cared if he didn't become a hunter. This way he'd be able to take over the dojo, marry Lila, and stay friends with both Rina and Keith. Dying in the middle of an empty forest while holding his number 2 is the last thing he wants. After running for a while, he ends up coming across a waterfall with nowhere else to go. Kai can't believe that this is the end and thinks if it's all over. Just then, he notices a light inside the waterfall, and as the monsters are already about to catch up, he decides to go inside the waterfall, not wanting to die in such a place. Once inside, he finds himself in a giant empty room, looking like a desert. Surprisingly, the sun seems to be shining as well, which confuses Kai as moments ago he was inside the forest during nighttime. Soon after, the entrance he came through disappears as well, but instead of worrying about it, Kai begins to laugh. As currently, he is glad that he managed to escape from the monsters. He then wonders if this cave itself was some kind of trap and notices a building nearby. Wanting to rest in the shade for a bit, he steps inside the building, only to find out that it's actually a temple. Additionally, he notices an altar-like structure inside the room with a place to put his handprint on. Even though there is something written, this kindergarten dropout fails to read it and decides to just place his hand on that thing. As soon as he puts his hand on top of it, all the crystals present in the middle of the room begin to glow, followed by a system window appearing. It begins to verify his gifts and mentions that Kai is holding a gift ranked above divine tier, making him wonder if this is some kind of mistake. Following that, the system window welcomes him to something called the Trails of the Gods. After he presses the proceed button, he is taken to a window informing him about all the rules of that place. After reading them, he gets to know that the building he is in is a dungeon. He is fully aware that places like this are cleared by top-tier hunters, but if he goes outside, there will be monsters waiting to turn him into minced meat. This causes him to panic, but he makes sure to stay calm and organize his thoughts. Kai then remembers that he is granted 5 things and makes the first thing, an item box, to appear. Inside the item box, there are 2 things, namely escape shoes and an indestructible stick. To start things off, Kai selects the escape shoes, causing them to appear out of nowhere. After taking a look at those shoes, Kai thinks about putting them back, which makes them disappear. After that, he says storage, causing the item box to display the things present inside, making him believe that he actually got himself a rare item box. Now, it's time to test the 4th item, which is appraisal skill. Kai begins by appraising the escape shoes and finds out that they increase the probability of fleeing from enemies. Reading about what the shoes are capable of makes Kai wonder if this is a national treasure level item and gets the idea of appraising himself. There, he finds out that his gift really is divine ranked and learns that under certain conditions, it holds the potential to exceed all limits in any category. Realizing that it's just a fancy way of saying that effort pays off, he decides to put it aside and remembers the 3rd item, that is elixir. After looking around the room, he manages to find the elixir spring, which surprises him as he thought it would be in a bottle. In order to test the capabilities of this elixir, Kai cuts himself using a knife and puts his injured hand in the elixir. To his surprise, the elixir heals the wound instantly. Realizing that he got an item box, the appraisal skill, and discovered the elixir spring, he might be able to become a hunter if he reports this to the Hunter Guild. After arming himself with everything he found, Kai is now prepared to escape this place. With that being said, Kai begins walking deeper into the dungeon and decides to stick to the wall, just like he learned in the Hunter Manual. Believing that he can make it through, Kai continues making his way forward until the wall he's using as a guide ends. Before he can decide what path he should pick, Kai notices a monster chewing his arm without a care in the world. He then begins to panic and tries to free himself from the monster. As Kai struggles to free himself, the monster grips his arm with even more strength, ultimately resulting in his arm getting severed. Without thinking much, Kai begins running towards the room from where he initially came from and goes straight towards the elixir. There, he rearranges his thoughts and remembers that he was on his way to the capital and was camping when he bumped into the man with red hair. Following that, he takes his head out of the elixir and after catching his breath, remembers that the grasshopper monster got his right arm. Luckily, the elixir manages to heal it, causing Kai to be relieved that he managed to escape from the monster again. Even though the elixir healed his arm, it couldn't repair his supreme drip, and seeing the blood stains on his shirt makes Kai realize that it wasn't a dream and everything he experienced was real. Additionally, he is aware that in order to escape, he needs to go back into the dungeon. He was lucky to survive this time, but the next time it happens, the grasshopper might turn him into a full-course meal. Thinking about this makes Kai annoyed, and he begins to cry, wondering why it always has to be him who goes through all of this. It has now been 7 days since he entered the temple. There is nothing to eat, and at this rate, he might starve to death. The only edible thing is bugs on the ground, but after appraising them, he finds out that it is a poisonous bug, powerful enough to eliminate a dragon using its poison. Even though it's highly nutritious, Kai decides not to eat it for now. Eventually, 15 days passed, and now Kai has an idea in mind for which he drinks a lot of elixir. Just to stay on the safe side, he drinks some more and decides to finally eat the poisonous bug. Without thinking much, he puts the whole thing in his mouth, and instantly his vision begins turning red, making him wonder if this is it. Just then, a notification of him acquiring a skill appears which makes him wonder why he is still alive. Following that, another pop-up notification appears, informing him that he has been granted resistance to weak poison. This makes Kai relieved that the elixir worked, but he still feels incredibly nauseous. Additionally, he has started experiencing headaches and dizziness. To remedy this, he drinks some elixir once again, which relieves him of both symptoms. For some reason, his stomach feels full too, but he can't be excited, knowing that he'll be eating nothing but bugs from now on. It has now been 100 days since he arrived at the temple and finally, he has gained total resistance to poison, which means that no matter how many of these bugs he eats, he won't die. Before long, 1 year passed and Kai has now started practicing swordsmanship to clear his mind. Just like that, a decade has passed, and Kai has not stopped practicing swordsmanship. However, after he has crossed the 40 years mark, Kai has started fighting imaginary opponents, and right now, he's facing off against Roman. Without thinking much, he dashes toward Roman, and they clash blades. Surprisingly, Kai manages to disarm Roman and defeats him for the first time. With that being said, Kai is done with today's virtual match and thanks his imagination of Roman for the practice. He then remembers that he has been winning a lot more in these virtual matches as he managed to beat his master as well. All this practice helps him acquire another skill that slightly increases his status during real combat with swords. Kai realizes that he has never heard of the Kairyu swordsmanship that the system is talking about, and noticing that it's called the first stage, he decides to keep up in order to gain the upper levels of this skill. Just like that, 800 years have passed and currently Kai is fighting a master swordsman from Isabel, the strongest elf swordsman, and the former sword emperor of Glitnir Empire. Now, 1500 years have passed, and Kai calls all those legendary heroes weak, telling them to come at him all at once. Ultimately, 3000 years have passed since this all started, and only one opponent is left who Kai can face. Currently, Kai is the strongest swordsman in the world, surpassing all sword saints combined. The only opponent he can face now is himself, and with that being said, the duel of Kai with himself begins. Following that, he finally sets out to explore the dungeon, and after using appraisal skill, realizes that the grasshopper's stats are unknown except for his name. However, he finds an enemy who's shrouded in mystery quite interesting and dashes towards him, telling the monster to show him the path he must take. The monster also tries to attack Kai, but he easily dodges it and mocks the monster for his attack being too straightforward and weak. Afterward, he manages to land a hit on the monster's face, and the monster tries counterattacking using his legs. However, Kai once again blocks the attack using his rod, and seeing the monster jump at him, Kai lets out a sigh, asking the monster if this is his limit. Furthermore, he calls it a waste of time and decides to show the grasshopper something special. Kai then uses a new technique called Brink of Death, splitting the grasshopper in several pieces. While he's disappointed by the show that the grasshopper had put for him, a notification appears, informing him that his status improves every time he defeats an enemy. Following that, he looks at the corpse of that grasshopper and thinks that swinging a sword would have felt more worthwhile. While going deeper into the dungeon, Kai notices that it is getting wider as he descends. Additionally, the toxic bugs he was eating are gone, which also makes Kai wonder if he should return back to the surface using the teleportation circle. However, he decides not to and starts munching on the grasshopper instead. After descending a few more floors of that dungeon, he finally comes across a monster called the Killer Hornet. Apparently, this monster arrived when he reached the 10th underground floor, and Kai figures that a powerful enemy appears every 10 floors he descends. Furthermore, he calls it a perfect timing as he was getting bored and suggests that they eliminate each other to their heart's content. Suddenly, the Hornet disappears and lunges at him with insane speed, ripping off Kai's arm before he could even notice. But instead of screaming like a little wimp, this time, Kai is impressed by his opponent instead. He mentions how pain after so long feels delightful and runs towards the Hornet, saying that this elimination will be worth savoring. As expected, the Hornet disappears once again, but this time, Kai tracks its movement using his eyes and dodges the attack just at the right moment. Realizing that the Hornet is doing a straight line attack as well, Kai wonders if that's all the Hornet is capable of. He has also noticed that the Hornet trembles in one place for a while before moving at high speed. To his surprise, the Hornet then lets out its stinger, making Kai realize that it was hiding its trump card. The Hornet then begins spraying its liquid all over the room, and Kai instantly figures that it's poison. Instead of dodging, he begins concentrating and uses the third form of his sword technique called the Moon Mirror. This technique allows Kai to wrap the poison around his stick, telling the Hornet that ranged attacks have no effect on him. With that being said, he throws the attack right back at the Hornet, causing it to burn to its demise, or that's what Kai had thought as the Hornet tries attacking him once again. He is impressed by how persistent the Hornet is, complimenting it for carrying the pride of a warrior. Nonetheless, Kai uses the second form of his sword technique called the Lightning Strike to punch a hole in the Hornet's body. Later, he informs it that as a fellow warrior, he made sure to respond with his fastest sword technique, and this time, the Hornet is dead for good. After defeating the Hornet, a notification appears informing Kai about the reward he has unlocked. While he's confused about the kind of reward it might be, a rusty-looking treasure chest appears in front of him. Inside that box, Kai finds a flame sword that has the ability to ignite anything it makes contact with. However, Kai isn't sure about this sword as he believes that his rod gets the job done just fine. Just then, the idea of using the flame sword to roast the bugs appears in his mind, but sadly there aren't any bugs nearby, so he decides to try it on the next floor. After descending even further, he enters a room that is filled with lava. However, Kai seems to like this and mentions that this is the kind of challenge he expects. Knowing that his shoes aren't heat resistant, he gets an idea and decides to experiment by taking off his shoes. After that, he puts the escape shoes back in his inventory and without hesitation, steps barefoot on the lava. However, the floor turns out to be hotter than the single moms in your area, and Kai quickly heals it using the elixir. Once again, he steps barefoot on the floor, and this time realizes that he is able to withstand the heat for about 10 seconds. Additionally, a pop-up window appears, granting him heat resistance that could be increased after exposing his body to heat 500 times. After healing his feet once again, Kai decides to max out his heat-resistant stats by continuously stepping on lava. Furthermore, he comes across floors that are filled with blazing magma, frozen ice, deserts, flooded rooms, wind blade zones, and lightning strike zones, but makes sure to increase his resistance to those things each time. Ultimately, after reaching the 300th floor, he has achieved resistance to all the rooms he went through, making him almost invincible. With that being said, he decides to move to the next room, and remembers the Thunder Beast gloves he picked up earlier, which he has been using to wipe his sweat. As he walks towards the next staircase, he can hear the sound of water and soon after, notices a beast named Thunder Tiger King waiting for him. The system lets him know that it's the final trail of the upper levels, and just as the tiger is about to land an attack, Kai's cuts it down into several pieces with a single attack. Apparently, the technique he used this time is the first form of the ultimate stage of swordsmanship called the Brink of Death. Suddenly, the system begins announcing his victory, and before it can finish talking, Kai notices giant fish swimming below. As the system continues talking about the special bonus that Kai has been rewarded, he figures that the fish looks more promising, and without thinking, jumps down from the platform. As soon as he dives into the water, he catches the attention of all those fish, who then begin charging towards him. As expected, Kai doesn't back down and manages to cut all the fish, later thinking about it not being the smoothest fight as this was his first underwater battle. But after coming out of the water, Kai quickly realizes that getting back to that spot might be the biggest trail of this floor. After he gets back on that platform, the system once again repeats the statement about the special bonus, and noticing it stutters, makes Kai question if it's okay, to which the system replies, telling Kai that there's something weird about him. Following that, Kai takes a look at the treasure chest he found within one of the fish he sliced up and starts off by opening the smaller box. Inside that box, he finds a book named Magic Tome, which makes him wonder if someone like him with the IQ of a soggy sock can even learn magic in the first place. Nonetheless, he puts it in the inventory and opens the second book, from which he finds a sword. Apparently, it is a mythical sword with an edge so sharp that it can cut lightning itself. Not only that, but the sword feels very natural to Kai, and the reason is its grip that is similar to the wooden swords from his dojo. After testing out the sword, Kai gets the feeling that this sword will become his new partner. It has now been 1,712 years since the game started, and Kai has now reached a place swarming with dragons and is called the Dragon Zone. But he finds it a perfect opportunity to test his new sword. With that being said, he begins slashing each and every dragon that comes in his path and quickly realizes that the sword perfectly harmonizes with his style. Following that, he reaches floor 350 where another dragon is present. Kai notices that this one is smaller compared to the other dragons, but after looking at its eyes, he can feel that the previous dragons are incomparable to this one. For this battle, even the system begins cheering for Kai, and without wasting any time, he lunges at the dragon to quickly finish this battle. However, after some time, he finds himself completely torn to shreds and begins laughing. Afterwards, he falls to the ground, commenting on how badly he was defeated and can't believe that all his slashes were nullified. Some time later, he returns to the elixir fountain to heal himself and mentions that he still can't get used to the sensation of his flesh regenerating. He then begins thinking of a way to deal with the physical nullification ability of that dragon and wonders if there is some other way. The idea of magic appears in his mind, and he decides to check out the magic book he received earlier. To start things off, he decides to go with the Introduction to Magic section. However, he quickly finds out that because of his blessing, it's impossible for him to acquire magic by forming a contract with the book. The only choice left for him is to read the original text directly from the book to acquire it. Kai then takes a sip of the elixir and notices the appearance of the system screen. It informs him that he was experiencing headache and nausea due to magic intoxication, but now he has developed a resistance to it. It has now been 1,673 years since the game started, and Kai has been using all this time to learn about magic. Even though it took him around 60 years, he starts to understand magic little by little. Apparently, magic can be classified into general attributes and special attributes. Acquiring general attributes requires innate talent unrelated to gifts, and without it, it's impossible to form contracts. Additionally, magic includes another concept called the non-attribute magic that involves imbuing objects or organic matter like the human body. Seeing that it only requires manipulation of magic power, Kai figures that he can acquire it. As he crosses the 8,000 years mark, Kai has realized while going through medical literature that the human body is a massive assembly of tiny cells. Furthermore, magic techniques like body reinforcement and ultra regeneration target the entire tissue, so if he can specify magic at the cellular core level, it should be possible for him to use long-range attacks. To test this theory out, he decides to fight a dragon and is grateful to the system for recharging the monsters over time. As the battle begins, the dragon launches a fire attack at Kai, but he replies back by using body reinforcement called adamantine strength. Even though he takes the fire attack head-on, Kai doesn't receive a single injury and finds out that he doesn't even need to activate ultra regeneration. Next up, he takes out his katana and uses weapon reinforcement called demonic armament. By imbuing his weapon with non-attribute magic, his sword now functions as a magical blade that even physical immunity won't be able to stop. Following that, he apologizes to the dragon for having to experience the blade he prepared for Fafnir, the dragon that defeated Kai. With a single strike, he cuts the upper portion of the dragon and notices that the upper half turned into dust, making him realize that dragons other than Fafnir can't even be used for practice anymore. Later, he tests another magic technique called Divine Eye that provides complete awareness of all monsters within 500-meter range. This helps him notice the two dragons that are present beyond the wall and to fight them. He decides not to use his sword, but another technique he has been working on. Now that 11,065 years have passed, Kai is able to eliminate dragons by throwing pebbles at them, using the magical throwing technique called Ultimate Stage. Ultimately, he has perfected long-range attacks and even earned the title of Dragon Slayer. He's done all he can and now leaves the rest to fate. With that being said, he steps back into the room where Fafnir is present, who mocks Kai by telling him that its physical immunity is unbeatable. However, Kai couldn't care less and took out his sword, telling Fafnir that its eyes are irresistible and that he has longed for this day to see those eyes of his once again. After letting Fafnir know that he has been waiting for this day for 3,500 years, Kai attacks Fafnir, and even though he misses the first strike, it is enough to destroy the room where Fafnir resides. Following that, he tells Fafnir to take a closer look at what he has achieved just for him. Furthermore, he lets Fafnir know that for 3,500 years he has thought of nothing but him, a way to finally defeat him. He had thought of Fafnir so many times that he was about to lose his mind, and now wants the dragon to show him the blood spilling from within its body. But just when Kai is about to attack once again, Fafnir ends up surrendering. Kai, who has been acting like a complete psychopath, comes back to his normal form and yells at Fafnir, asking if he's kidding. Additionally, he begins motivating Fafnir to try harder, but Fafnir replies that it's impossible for him. Kai reminds him that he's spent 3,500 years researching magic just to encounter him and gets interrupted by the appearance of the system screen. This time, letting Kai know that the 8th trail has been cleared as Fafnir surrendered. However, Kai can't accept this outcome and begins questioning if there is something the system could do, but it only reminds Kai that it's over as he's won and that a special reward will be given to him. The special reward turns out to be Fafnir wanting to join Kai's party, but after taking a closer look at the crying dragon, Kai is sure that it doesn't seem that way. Furthermore, he begins to wonder how a creature so big is going to follow him and assumes that it can adapt to accompany him. Nonetheless, he's glad that Fafnir can speak human language, as he was starting to go crazy after being a loner for 10,000 years. In the end, he accepts Fafnir in his party, which causes Fafnir to change its form and become much smaller, ultimately turning into a little girl. After staring at her for a second, he realizes that this form might be a little too small. Following that, Kai puts on his new fresh drip that he acquired after defeating Fafnir. It's made up of a legendary dragon's parts and is said to remain durable for hundreds of years. His previous clothes didn't even retain their original shape, so he's really grateful to have a full set of new clothes. Just then, Fafnir asks him if she should burn his old set of clothes. Kai refuses, and Fafnir tells him never to take it out as those white sauce stains are oddly prominent. In the end, he puts his old clothes in the item box and decides to head back to the ground floor as he has something to show to Fafnir. Apparently, he built a little hut for them and informs Fafnir that he gathered the material from the labyrinth. However, she doesn't seem that impressed, and Kai reassures her that there is food to eat. Following that, he puts a piece of beef from the Thunder Ox in front of her, asking what she thinks he's going to do with it. But Fafnir isn't a big fan of his annoying build-ups. To start things off, Kai finally takes out the flame sword that he got a while ago and slashes the piece of meat using it. This results in the meat turning into a perfectly made steak, and he lets her know that it took him 10 years to achieve this. When Fafnir asks if she can eat it, Kai agrees and adds that the only seasoning they have is salt, which he gathered from the seawater present on floor 170 to 180. Without hesitation, Fafnir begins chewing on Kai's arm instead of the meat, causing him to remind her that it's that beef she's eating, but Fafnir couldn't care less. Later, he gives her a ton of meat to eat while he drinks some elixir to heal his hand that Fafnir took a bite of earlier. Seeing her eat with her hand, Kai shows her how to eat with a fork, advising her to try it as well. Eating with someone felt pretty strange to him, and it was like something was missing within him. This made his obsession over power melt away like shadows at sunset, and the thirst for blood flowing through him was no longer visible. Sometime later, they arrive at the 400th floor, and now, 13,000 years have passed since the game started. There, they are encountered by a beast who was created when an elephant and a gorilla had the time of their lives. Fafnir questions why it has such a long nose, and Kai remembers that he saw this in a book before and realizes that it's called an elephant. The beast then begins laughing and commends Kai for reaching this floor. He then introduces himself as Jiri Makala, a true evil god. Kai asks Fafnir if she knows that he means and wonders if she's done with her steak, but Fafnir replies that she'll finish it later and puts her hand in her pocket. From there, she takes out a robotic arm, telling Jiri Makala that she's going to give him a good whooping. Kai asks where she learned to be this violent, to which Fafnir replies that she learned it from him. This makes Kai decide to step in and set up an example. He then tells Jiri Makala that throwing his life away so carelessly is not good, asking him to surrender so he can let him go. While Jiri Makala can't believe someone is telling him to surrender, Kai adds that he's not fond of violence and is committed to let everything from bugs to dragons go as long as they don't hurt him. Jiri Makala loses his cool hearing Kai's statement and reminds him that he's the servant of the supreme god. Furthermore, he adds that he's the first vassal who holds the highest rank among the gods, and that for someone like Kai, even speaking to Jiri Makala should be an honor. However, Kai has enough of his yapping session, and with a single strike, turns the Jiri Makala into ashes. He then mentions that if Jiri Makala hadn't given a short refusal, at least his bones would have been left. Suddenly, he remembers that he was supposed to set an example, but ends up making Fafnir excited, who believes they should beat everyone into oblivion from now. This makes Kai explain to her that it's not okay to be violent towards everyone she meets, but Fafnir completely ignores him and asks for some food. Just then, he receives another reward that is called Subjugation Encyclopedia. While he's confused about what the book is capable of, a pop-up appears, asking Kai if he wants to save the soul of Jiri Makala in the encyclopedia. While he thinks hard about it, Fafnir almost presses the button, but is stopped by Kai just in time, telling him to press it the other way around. Eventually, she pushes the yes button, which makes the book glow and stores the information of Jiri Makala inside it. Kai figures that he can summon monsters. He registers and decides to try and complete the encyclopedia from the first floor again. For the time being, they decide to head back to the first floor as Fafnir is starving. After returning to their hut, Kai decides to summon Jiri Makala, reminding Fafnir that it's the same monster Kai totally annihilated. Following that, Kai begins saying the summoning incantation and ultimately makes Jiri Makala appear. Confused, Jiri Makala looks around and begins wondering where he is until he notices Kari standing right in front of him. Kai lets him know that he will be serving him from now on, but Jiri Makala instantly disagrees. Realizing that Jiri Makala is as disobedient as ever, he takes out his indestructible stick, deciding to train Jiri Makala himself, saying that after wandering between life and death for about 10,000 times, he might become a bit more obedient. Now, 51,000 years have passed and Jiri Makala is sleeping peacefully when suddenly, Kai yells at him to get up. He instantly gets up and both Kai and Jiri Makala greet each other, but Jiri Makala still gets punished as his response was too slow. Kai reminds him that his response must be done before his and Jiri Makala begins bowing, telling Kai that he is a worthless bug crawling on the floor. Soon after, Fafnir wakes up as well and Jiri Makala once again greets her, calling himself a worthless bug. This results in him getting smacked for his slow response again, and is reminded by Kai that he's not supposed to use that language in front of Fafnir. But it's a bit too late, as now he greets Kai by calling him a worthless bug as well. As a punishment, Kai tells Jiri Makala to do 500,000 push-ups, and 1 hour later, he is finally done with the punishment. Kai then suggests heading back underground to continue filling the encyclopedia, adding the fact that he wishes to test the new robotic arm he got the other day. Apparently, it is the Divine Seal gloves which have the power to tone down Kai's abilities at will. If he lowers his stats to the limit, get beaten to near death, and then win, his stats are slightly improved. With that being said, Kai leaves, telling Jiri Makala to restock supplies and clean the house. After 65,000 years have passed, Kai and Fafnir reach floor 700 where there's no tree or rock, only a blood-red sky. Just then, they notice something nearby and wonder if it is a boss. That thing turns out to be a monster who compliments Kai for making it so far, despite looking like someone with a foot fetish. Kai realizes that he can't gauge the enemy's strength because the gloves have lowered his status as previously. He could estimate their rank. Feeling its strong bloodlust makes Kai wonder if he should take off the gloves, but is unsure as he'd lose the XP if the monster turns out to be a weakling. He then asks Fafnir about what he should do, but she is too focused on how tasty the birdie looks. Kai questions if she likes chicken, to which Fafnir replies, asking if they will be roasting it. The phoenix decides to hear what they are talking about and catches Kai calling it a freakish bird monster. This enrages the phoenix, who yells at Kai for calling him a freak. But Kai replies that it's just a figure of speech and he only means he is a freak as a food ingredient. However, hearing him call it food enrages it even more, and he decides never to forgive him. Simultaneously, Fafnir takes out her robotic arms, telling Kai that she will be taking care of the birdie, while she prepares to take on the monster. Phoenix calls her a fool for challenging him and starts by attacking Fafnir using its flames. But Fafnir jumps and punches all the flames it has been throwing with ease. Following that, she uses an attack called the Lion Sky Slash to bring the phoenix onto the ground, and with one more hit, cuts the whole bird in half. With that being done, she lands on the floor, hitting the Spider-Man pose, and gets complimented by Kai as she finally said the name of that special move right. Fafnir then reminds Kai that it's time to cook, and he takes out his flame sword when suddenly, the phoenix's body begins burning on its own. Soon after, its body starts regenerating as well, and after fully healing itself, the phoenix reveals that he is actually immortal. Just as Fafnir is about to battle it again, Kai stops her and begins laughing, calling him the best. He adds that his blood is boiling as it's been a while since he felt this thrill, and now wants to test if Phoenix truly is immortal. First, he wants to pull out all its organs, then slice it into tiny pieces down to the size of a fingernail. Furthermore, he'll use his sword to turn it into dust and wants to test how long its life force can hold out. However, before long, Kai can't believe what just happened, and is in a state of shock as the phoenix died when he diced it into bite-sized chunks. Even though he cooks the phoenix for Fafnir, he still can't believe that it's not regenerating, and when the notification about adding the phoenix into the encyclopedia appears, Kai punches it. Furthermore, he calls the bird a gutless, pathetic monster for dying so easily, only to realize that he said it all in front of Fafnir. Instantly, he shifts his mood and tells her that using such language is not okay, and reassures her that he only did it to show her what things she shouldn't be doing. Fafnir agrees, calling him lousy, making Kai realize that it's already too late. Having no other choice, he calls her a good girl and suggests going back to their house, to which Fafnir agrees, now calling him a worthless bug. Kai has finally cleared the trail of the gods, and as a reward for clearing the trail, his memories are forcibly reconnected to just before the trail began. This makes him remember that he was on a journey to the royal capital. Furthermore, he has been pursued by black beasts and a redhead, which caused him to stumble into a dungeon called the Trail of the Gods. If he hadn't cleared the dungeon, he would never have been able to leave. Luckily, time was frozen both inside and outside the dungeon, where he fought countless monsters and formed bonds along the way. Somehow, he managed to escape the dungeon as well, even though it took him 100,000 years and 7 days to clear it. Seeing his behavior makes Fafnir mention that her master is acting weird, and Astaroth, the former final boss, replies that it's natural as they've just returned to the original world. Apparently, despite being the final boss, Astaroth saw his status and surrendered before the battle even began. Just then, Fafnir mentions that someone is coming, and to their surprise, it ends up being the same redhead MO who was chasing Kai earlier. Kai instantly remembers who this person was, and even though he remembers Signal being a strong fellow, he doesn't look so strong to him now. Signal notices that Kai's got company and comments on how both of them are total knockouts. Hearing these insults causes both of them to almost turn Signal into tomato paste, but Kai stops them, wanting to handle it himself. Additionally, he makes sure to wear the divine sealing gloves to help him hold back a little. Hearing Kai wanting to hold back enrages Signal, who asks Kai if he even understands the situation he is in. But before he can say anything further, Kai attacks him and breaks all the fingers of his self-pleasuring hand. This makes Signal order his monsters to attack, but Kai uses his sword technique to easily take care of them. Following that, he walks towards Signal and, using the technique named Brink of Death, makes nuggets out of the remaining monsters. The lackeys mention how Signal doesn't even stand a chance, and after tying him up, Kai questions him about his actions, and he confesses everything without resistance. Signal lets them know that Frankton had colluded with the Empire to kidnap the first Princess Rosemary. To execute the plan, the Empire sends Ents and Signal, which is why the Empire's summoner was wandering in the kingdom's property. Kai then thinks about how he is compelled to protect Rosemary for some reason and wonders if he can fight the Sword Emperor. Astaroth questions if Kai is thinking of something reckless, and even Fafnir figures that her master seems quite excited. To start things off, Kai summons grasshoppers from his encyclopedia to create a distraction for the Empire forces and orders them to eliminate all the targets they come across. With that being said, countless grasshoppers begin flying around, eating and eliminating any hooded figures they come across. Rosanna also hears the commotion outside and announces that they are under attack, ordering everyone to prepare immediately. When Rosemary questions about the enemies, Rosanna replies that it's the Empire and they have a traitor among them. With that being said, Rosanna suggests escaping at once, but ends up running into Frankton. She instantly figures that he is the one who betrayed them, which makes Rosemary wonder if her brother also betrayed her. Frankton mentions that if Rosemary becomes the baby maker for the Empire's third prince and Gilbert ascends the throne, their kingdom will be secure. However, Rosemary argues that if achieving this means harming his own people, then he's nothing but a traitor. Arnold also appears, letting Frankton know that he won't allow it. This reassures the girls, and he apologizes to Rosemary for his late arrival. With that being said, he tries landing an attack on Frankton, but gets blocked by another person who comments that Arnold is a worthy challenge. Furthermore, he introduces himself as Zignir and suggests having a soul-shaking duel to the death. Arnold instantly realizes that he's the Empire's Sword Emperor and begins fighting him head-on. Rosanna notices that they are evenly matched, but ends up jinxing Arnold as out of nowhere, a snake appears and bites Arnold's neck. This causes Zignir to yell at Ents for interfering, and Ents replies that he has no intention of indulging in his pointless hobbies. When Zignir questions if he dares mock the honor of a swordsman, Ents replies that he's only prioritizing the Emperor's decree. At the same time, Arnold signals Rosanna, and she understands that he wants her to run into the forest while the enemy is distracted. But before she even gets the chance to run away, a pervy soldier gets a hold of that busty princess, while Rosanna gets captured by a baldy as well. When he asks Ents if he's allowed to take the Rosanna, Ents agrees. This gives the shiny head the perfect chance to finally get some bed-rocking action tonight. Furthermore, Ents tells Frankton to leave the princess's restraint to him and walks away along with the Zignir. The guard holding Rosemary tells her to watch as Rosanna becomes a woman, and hearing this statement makes her call out for help. Just then, the baldy's head rotates 180 degrees, followed by Kai beheading the guard holding Rosemary. While Kai can't believe a head could break so easily, Rosemary can't believe that person in front of her really is Kai. While Kai helps Rosemary stand back up, the Empire soldiers run away from Fafnir, who's having the time of her life beating them up. Asteroth reassures Kai to leave all the small fries to them, and seeing him interact with the monsters confuses Rosemary, as she had always heard from Rena that Kai was a total weakling. Now, it's hard for her to believe that he's the holder of the most useless gift. Just then, she notices several smiles sticking to Rosanna's spicy spots. However, Kai lets them know that those aren't enemies but his healing slimes. After hearing this, Arnold notices that the numbness is fading, and the wounds start to close as well. Rosemary then gives Rosanna a hug, glad that her V-card didn't get swiped. While Kai compliments his smile for doing a good job, Arnold questions if he can summon creatures, to which he replies that it's not technically summoning. Afterward, he gives head pats to Fafnir and the grasshopper as well, but gets distracted when Ents and Zignir appear, questioning how long it takes to capture one woman. Rosemary freaks out seeing them back, while Zignir notices the sword on Kai's back. Realizing that there's still a swordsman left, Zignir decides to take him on. Following that, he takes out his sword, telling Ents not to interfere or he'll seriously eliminate him. Kai, noticing Zignir's stance, gets disappointed. While Rosemary tells Kai to stop as it's dangerous, he picks up a stick from the ground, telling Zignir that he isn't worth pointing his blade at. This statement makes Zignir furious, and he jumps at Kai, only to be blocked by a mere stick. The battle continues, and Rosanna is impressed by how Kai is fighting the Sword Emperor with just a branch. She then asks Arnold why the Sword Emperor's attack can't reach Kai, but he is too shocked to reply. Eventually, he mentions that it's because their swordsmanship skills are worlds apart. It's like seeing someone who's trained for millennia and a complete novice. Additionally, it's not just talent but the result of relentless training. Ultimately, Kai disarms Zignir of his weapon. Furthermore, he tells Zignir that he has talent with the sword, but needs to think why the previous Sword Emperor entrusted this title to him. Eventually, Kai decides to spare him this time, considering his potential as a Sword Emperor. While Zignir runs away crying, Ents mentions that Kai is far too dangerous, and he might become a threat to the Empire, which is why he needs to die. With that being said, he summons the Spirit King Ifrit. Furthermore, he allows Ifrit to consume the mana of his subordinate if he needs to and burn everything to ash. While all the Empire Knights are burned to their demise, Kai lets Ifrit know that his pathetic flames can't burn him and summons Jiri Mekhala to teach the Spirit King a lesson. Jiri Mekhala ends up crushing the Spirit King under its foot and lets Kai know that he's deeply honored to be summoned once again. After that, Jiri Mekhala takes the Spirit King inside the encyclopedia, while Ents begins begging Kai to spare him and asks him to join the Empire. But without hesitation, Kai cuts him in half, saying that there's no value in the words of someone who uses their subordinate as bait. Now that everything is done, Kai tells Fafnir and Astaroth that they should leave, but Frankton tells him to stop, asking Kai to serve under the next king, Prince Gilbert. He reassures Kai that the prince would ensure he lives in absolute comfort, but Kai mentions that he's not interested. He also adds that a royal family that discriminates based on gifts or lineage is nothing but pests. This statement makes Rosanna yell at Kai for mocking the royal family, causing Fafnir and Astaroth to get defensive as well. However, Rosemary tells Rosanna to stop, letting her know that it's fine. For the first time, she has someone who shares her views, and instead of relying on royalty or nobility, each citizen should participate in governance. Kai reminds her that it means giving up being a princess, to which Rosemary replies that she doesn't mind. Furthermore, she makes a decision and tells Kai that she wishes to appoint him as her royal guard. This comes as a surprise to everyone, and when Rosanna questions if she's really appointing a useless traitor as the royal guard to the heir to the throne, Rosemary replies that there's no one left in the palace she can trust. There's no one suitable, as Kai is uninterested in wealth and has strength surpassing the Sword Emperor. She then tells Kai that if he accepts, he needs to swear his loyalty by kissing her hand. However, Kai decides to remain an alpha and, not giving up on his nonchalant act, gets the job done with a handshake, accepting the offer until she finds a proper royal guard. With the deal closed, Astaroth mentions how Kai is always getting involved in trouble, but Kai believes he could fight stronger opponents if he sticks with the princess. Sometime later, Rosemary writes a letter to Renee, letting her know that she's heading to the great city of Balls to hand over Frankton. Furthermore, she is sure that the news about her getting attacked must have shocked Rina and reassures her that Kai drove all the Imperial soldiers away, along with the fact that he is accompanying her as well. Currently, they are staying in the post town of Papla, and when Kai questions why they have to stay there for a few weeks, Rosemary replies that it's until Balls is confirmed to be safe. Additionally, she mentions how glad she is that Kai accepted the role of royal guard, saying that if he had refused, she would have had no choice but to appoint Rina as her guard. This reminds Kai that Rina is currently training in the royal capital and wonders if he felt compelled to protect Rosemary because of Rina. Rosemary then adds that she doesn't want her best friend on a dangerous mission, to which Kai agrees, saying that he wishes to protect his childhood friend as well. He then reminds her that he's only acting as a substitute royal guard, and Rosemary agrees, saying if she can ask for one more favor. Later that day, Astaroth and Fafnir along with their dog are sleeping peacefully when Kai enters the room and yells at them to wake up. Astaroth wakes up in a hurry with her peaches exposed and is told that they are heading to town to do some shopping. In this state of panic, Astaroth accidentally lets go of her blanket, giving him a 4K view of her glorious honkers. While Kai is surprised to find out that Astaroth is a woman, Fafnir also wakes up, and soon after, both Rosemary and Rosanna appear in the room as well. Rosemary then asks Fafnir to go to the town with Kai and look for ingredients to make a cake. Excited, Fafnir asks if she's making a cake, to which she agrees, saying that she'll try her best even though she's not as good as Kai. Meanwhile, Kai orders his summon called Nemia to protect the princess while they are in town. As the three of them leave to go to the town, Rosanna wonders if it's okay, and Rosemary tells her that if she hadn't suggested that, they wouldn't have left the inn in effort to protect her. Apparently, Papla is a town nestled within the vast silk forest, and hunters from all around the world pass through this place. It's also a place of freedom where persecuted beast folk gather, and he knows this much because his mother used to tell him stories about this town. While he's busy thinking about registering as an adventurer someday, Astaroth comments on the commotion. Kai decides to check it out, and to his surprise, it turns out to be a Papla fruit on display. The owner presents it to Lord Getty, asking him to have a taste, but before tasting it, he signals his magicians to do some funny business. Astaroth instantly notices that he used some sort of magic to rot the fruit. Following that, Getty takes a bite and throws it on the ground, saying that it's totally rotten. Furthermore, he reminds them that he is tasked with selecting an offering for Gilbert, and feeding him rotten fruit is the same as giving it to Gilbert. He then lets that owner know that he has made an enemy of the entire Blood Alliance, while the owner of the fruit tries his best to beg for forgiveness. Just as Astaroth tells Kai that they shouldn't intervene, someone from the public yells at Getty that this won't be happening. That person turns out to be the leader of one of the 4 sacred guilds who came along with the sub-leader. Getty argues that the action of townspeople can't be overlooked, and the sub-leader mentions that Gilbert wouldn't want to see his people suffer. The leader also asks Getty to calm his anger, causing him to let it slide, advising the fruit owner to bring proper ones next time. However, looking at their petty performance, both Astaroth and Kai have figured that those guild leaders are definitely in on the scam. As Kai begins walking away, Fafnir notices her dog Fen running away. On the other hand, a beast folk is getting bullied as it was his father's fruit that angered Getty. They start threatening him, saying that they will never buy fruit from him again. Furthermore, he starts by pushing him away and kicks him in the stomach. This causes one of the fruit to fall onto the ground, and one of those thugs ends up crushing it under his feet. This makes him think that the Papla fruit his father gathered was first-rate and regrets not being a strong hunter, as then he could have stood his ground. Just then, Fen appears in front of the beast folk and tries defending him, followed by the appearance of Astaroth and Fafnir. Kai also appears, telling Fen not to set the town on fire. Fafnir also waves at Fen, and he apologizes for running ahead. One of them mentions that tourists shouldn't stick their nose in town's business, but ends up getting kneed to the ground by Kai. This makes the rest of the thugs prepare to attack Kai, but their attacks have no effect on him. Realizing that he only needs to leave one of them alive, Kai attacks the rest of them, leaving only one intact. When the boys try to thank him, he advises him to thank Fen instead and tells Astaroth to take Fafnir and the boy to Rosemary's place. With that being said, he returns to that thug, asking to let him meet his boss, saying that the rotten fruit isn't the only conspiracy of this town. Later, Rosemary bakes cake for everyone and gets told by Astaroth that Kai won't be back tonight because of the investigation. This makes her a bit disappointed as she wanted Kai to taste it, but gets reminded by Fafnir that she can always make it again. Meanwhile, a few kilometers away from Papla town, a boy receives a magic beast, telling him to devour everything in its path. Later that day, Rosanna yells at Kai, asking what he was thinking interfering with the town matters. She further adds, telling Kai that she'll never forgive him for putting the princess in danger. Kai starts off by apologizing and mentions that this conspiracy involves nobles connected to the Amelia family as well, asking if the princess would stay silent. This causes Rosemary to ask if she can do anything to help, and Kai asks her to gather people, as he'll be holding a beast folk information session. With that being said, Kai starts explaining that the foundation of Papla town's prosperity and trade lies in the agricultural goods prepared by the beast folks. Nobles who want to seize the farmland work with the guilds who are seeking fame, and the mayor who discriminates against beast folk and ultimately take help from the thugs who will do anything for money. These groups devised a plan to drive the beast folk out of the town. Apparently, they all had a meeting afterward where Getty was complimented for his acting, who further informed everyone that the bandit group they had hired would stage an attack on the town. After that, the Coin Guild will save the town from the so-called Beast Folk rebellion staged by the bandits, which will give them the chance to capture the Beast Folk and sell them as slaves. This information was acquired from a thug Kai captured by his subordinate named Beelzebub, who's an expert in interrogation. The Beast Folk can't believe all this and begin to question if this is even true. The Beast Boy remembers that his parents collapsed from the stress and realizes that no one would believe such a terrible truth. Just then, Kai pats his head, asking what he wants to do. The Beast Boy replies that he can't forgive them for using their fruits like that and wants to protect the town from those guys. Hearing this makes the other Beast folks motivated to do the same, bringing tears in his eyes. Kai lets him know that this is due to the trust his family has built up, telling the Beast Boy named Shira that it's his strength. Shira tries to thank Kai, but he lets him know that it's his town to protect. One of the beast baddies mentions that most of them are women and children who don't know how to fight alone. Kai agrees, saying that he could easily wipe out the bandits, but can't stay in town to protect them forever. He further mentions that the place for beast folk must be won by their own strength and promises to support whoever has the resolve to fight for their freedom. On the other hand, the Aura farmer named Dilma mentions that reviving the demon beast and unleashing it on Papla town is an easy job for a calamity like him. The busty elf called Nail reminds him that a 100 million ore job isn't cheap, asking him to make sure he completes it. But Dilma argues that unlike weak demons, he has no reason to fail, which causes one of her subordinates to get furious. Without hesitation, Dilma uses his magic to melt each and every single one of them. Furthermore, he reassures Nail that they are important sponsors and that he won't harm the rest of them, telling her to leave while he's in a good mood. Apparently, a grasshopper was listening to this conversation and returned to Kai, informing him that a demon beast is planning to invade the town. This makes Kai wonder if they got the scent of this situation and decide to see the results of the beast folks' training. At the same time, the bandit leader mentions that the request was to only attack beast folk, but he orders his men to take everything in sight. Just when one of the bandits is about to enter a house, Shira appears behind him and instantly dashes forward, taking him down with a single strike. Fen begins praising him for doing a good job, while he can't believe this as he only did what Kai has taught him. Turns out a few weeks earlier, Kai's subordinates held a training camp to train the best folks and slowed down the time so they could get a ton of practice. Kai taught them that the bandit group size doesn't match the number of beast folk, and if they master a one-strike sure-hit technique, victory will be theirs. Elsewhere, Getty praises the mayor for bringing him quite the hottie tonight and starts off by grabbing her thick thighs, only to get kicked in the face by her. Surprisingly, it was one of the beast folks who tells the mayor that it's for dirtying Shira's fruits. As all the beast folks continue defeating the bandits, Shira starts to believe that they can win. Rosemary is also surprised to find out that the bandits are weaker than expected, but Kai tells her that it's still too early to celebrate. When she asks what he means, Kai sets out, asking her to stay still and watch. Meanwhile, in the middle of the town, the Coin Guild leader accuses the beast folk of attacking the town when suddenly, Kai appears with a mountain of those bandits, informing everyone about their cosplay strategy. He then asks one of the bandits if the coin told him to attack the town, to which he instantly agrees, wondering if they were planning to dispose of the bandits and take the credit themselves. The sub-leader argues that the town folks won't believe the bandits, but Kai responds by saying that all the bandits have been captured, and if everyone learns about their betrayal, they'll all respond the same way. The coin leader then begins accusing Kai instead, and with the help of the sub-leader, tries attacking him with their thorns. However, he easily grabs their thorns and pulls them towards himself, causing them to crash into a wall. While the guild members can't believe their leader was taken down in one hit, Kai mentions that he's just lending a hand to those in trouble, deciding to lend the coin a hand if they want to be heroes so badly. Do you think Kai will be able to save the town from those evildoers? Comment strongest if you'd like part 2 of this series. As usual, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.